Hello, America. Let us feel naked. I know best how to explain what's going on. Now, there are people who are young men and women now, who are young man involved, but also his parents involved differentially, as the intelligence community associated with Rocky Hill schools, and as people and with positions standing at the schools, like now also their uses of words like privacy, because this is where they force people to speak through others. Through time, where they have said, oh, if someone's speaking about you, you should go to this person. They're painting people with fake motivations at locations relevant to where all programs and all non sophistication and all overt criminal enterprises and private ones originally and still were are bound. Tactical ulterior then has been described to us. We don't have to be lawyers. We want also to be able to explain how we know the bar itself is criminally foreign influence delusions raw. And or when that's not true, that's what's generated. That's what's there's a raise too. All the exceptions, exception nature too. The course of black pupils' whites of eyes has been abridged. The significance of it is denied by the only voices speaking, the only theater as criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, apart from that identity of positive that is also positive unto itself, as that system that is hyper native, then abridged as native colonizations, Native Americans tribes, then abridged as Native American tribes in America bound together, helped each other be strong enough to become one of these fake countries too, since semi-ancient times, countries A through Z, tactically self-valued, tactically ulterior from how we are revealed by nature, bound, individually grouped in together. How nature uses value, tied to its that's discernment of its identity. How nature uses how it is each identity, but it distinctly, non-distinctly, hyper simultaneously. It is making more of itself, and it is showing and wants us to see as consciousness what really is going to cause positive value nature progressions, action natures, and how its method is uses the hyper invisible juxtaposed with the visible, invisible but still discernible too, where and how it is juxtaposed. Now, this is understanding this makes you capable of programming better than programmers. How could you know that? Well, in other words, we're gonna one thing we could do to make we have to show how everyone that has not seen this in semi-ancient times how to make positive that's also hyper positive unto itself the system that is stronger than all parts of space nature individually grouped and together. And that is what is causing things to come into and go out of that, making more and more of its identity or volume as a forever nature, as one thing it is constantly, and where it is value as nature slash nature is value. For example, as the value of life, as a quality of diffusion, now diffused and through identity of the ground sciences. But before being through identity of the ground sciences, first with that collusion method, everyone was forced to roll with, but also to simultaneously when hating it and when liking it. This needs both. It knew that nature would increasingly demonstrate a breaching method was present. Northern colonies and southern colonies, non distinctly, while they were there distinctly. relevant to this means to discern it. You have to understand how we are individual grouped and species identity of volume. What speaks for that makes voice for humanity, but otherwise is speaking for humanity. As a nature of theater, positive treatment, as a criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatment. I am not a lawyer. We can get the lawyers and judges to help. Perfect litigation here. Black people's beard. Injunctive reliefs. See what how's the reparations is not narratives. And then what about everyone else in that trap, in those traps slash s? This is before our founders were even born, before their parents were even born. The suburbs were designed, the north with slavery entrenched north and south. Before cars, therefore. They, they had already sustained and they were still sustaining tactically, taking away people's and changing people's education, therefore their words, their quality of fact sheet nature. Therefore, their means to afford the others who might make short words by that system that uses the five orders, the order of the value of truth as it actually was, no finite distinction denied, not valuing that being or having been denied by self or others. Because this is what its consciousness shows, its consciousness answers. Well, a 10. There is a myth that people say, oh, because you didn't do your grades right in class, this is why you don't know about computers, or this is why you don't know about that. They left and leave out really where and how the sciences got abridged. But that's because from off all locations, already having been sustained, were our collusion slash S at all formal and informal, private and database locations, relationships, and where and how those, even the people private, not directly tied to the interbranch, like campuses, even private ones that have nothing to do with that. The people at those locations are saying and speaking in roles of wire crimes, even broadcasted ones, used to perpetually make A, therefore B treatments, self-valued, where and how that was is exploited, where and how the breaching method is demonstrated to people, when you're young, and how you got away from being able to make these short words is simultaneously involved with how you found out means to make short words even better, because now you can anticipate where and how all the liars are going to jump in when you try to make calmly state things. I stayed calm with my interactions with the interbranch, and I caught them. They couldn't handle it. They had to pretend I yelled with them, because that's how I caught them at a location. Rolls with one of those contacts where they have child abusers, and they force that. But it's not just sexual. It's a whole bunch of, it's differentially too. It's everyone with their motivations narratives too. And it's where and how from off all locations there were more names involved with it. They already employed all the natures of the programs with the kids, of the judicial branch, of the executive branch, of the military, criminally foreign influenced, as uses of positive and negative treatments that cannot defend themselves and afford honesty towards what the VA is standing manifest as and with and for. Poverty, elderly homes, how the status. Well, I don't want to use the status quo. In other words, in other words, how the principles have been forsaken and other pretended simultaneously. They were backed into roles with these bound, self-valued sides of criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments syntactically manifest and uses of them. So there are names. I said things and had behavior online. For example, after it was recorded, demonstrated, confirmed, people were involved with database crimes. One of the things that they constantly were people who use corners of buildings, corners of and the middles of it. Like I don't know Mark Violet. There was one exception, two exceptions when I was walking by that were made in a cafeteria, which is his roles with foreign and domestic military and countries and people involved with the wire crimes and switching names with the interbranch Weathersfield and intercities through time, intercampuses. They have a remote possession of the campus. But before we get to this, how to make positives distinct instead of positives out of negative that are criminal insidiousness natures of positives. So in other words, all kinds of negatives were employed by with the breaching method caused. And no one understands that. So we could monetize by making 100% owned as a counter to that breaching method that used the torture method that was set up where they tactically denatured the identity of the ground, hyper native pure, and then sustained that. And they probably thought no one would make it any worse, and it got worse and worse. And this is before our founders' parents were even born, and now the suburbs are here. This design of houses, all victims / hyper victims, and that those crazy laws like slavery is an archaeological evidence where it is positive and negative simultaneously. It's positive because it is proof. There's a breaching method there. There was fake law pretending to be law. That's how it's positive. It tells you there's fake law pretending to be law. You look at the positive and negative simultaneously to know that. You know that it's denying finite, the order of the finite, the order that is active, but per its system and on time. See this, I don't know a Jennifer Smith, a Joe DeMoro, and a John DeMoro, and a Jerry Kerr, and who has a father named Jerry Kerr too, and a Michael Kerr. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. A Judge Smith, and her and them, people associated with her, involved with various natures of federal crimes with evidences and with databases. Since before computers, this method has been using databases that were the possession of the Republic before it became criminally foreign influence, and where it had been a grouped possession, consciously caring about where and how we are grouped by nature itself, individual names, group names, and species name, humanity. There is understanding the identity of order that these 5 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature, they are coming to, from, as, with, and for themselves. The identity of the hyper-simultaneous. Interbranch names and locations names, noted as. And overt criminal enterprises and private ones. recorded simultaneously are self-valuing, uses of other people's names and narratives regarding their motivations that are offensively in the way of any voice and sensing, made more and more to sense and sensibility. Any voice that is going to use short words, using truth that are true always, not denying any exceptions, not valuing exceptions, not using truth for lies, not using truths between lies or lies between truths, not valuing that being or having been done. Really, what it really seeking to understand, contemplative, more and more answers that come from that. See, if honesty attended to that without leaving out the smallest finite detail of valuing it, having been left out, being left out, evolution's fruits, gifts, means appear from nowhere. So we have to take a counter position to what they have as slavery movies. So, in other words, you don't make another criminal insidiousness nature role with that, because it was criminal insidiousness, positive treatment, and negative treatment simultaneously, specifically to be the identity theft, fraud, slander method. Sickly, distinctly against everyone, every group, knowing people were going to come out of it, but knowing exactly what is today. Complete blame on other things, others, ourselves. What caused those sick, crazy laws? Worse than witch trials and the slavery as we've known it. Not hard and not detail oriented, but as criminal insidiousness nature. Because if it was hard, this you would see what's the whole process of understanding history real fast. There's a criminal insidiousness delivery system method against the human faculty of nature, and that carried over. And the Native Americans were last to fall because they coupled with our our founding parents, and our founding parents coupled with them, even though they were incompatible. And so the president has the name president / chief. They're incompatible volumes, but one way. But increasingly, that way, to explain it, also record admitting and demonstrating that identity, the grounds identity of relationship to itself and the value of it that countries have, A through Z, individually grouped and together, every single one of them. Self-value, can't defend that and afford what identity's voice is syntactically supposed to say. Otherwise, it's pushed away, or it's a special difference in your own, hyper-additionally to each other, but boom, that way. Lease of IDs. Which way? All spins. So consciousness shows consciousness. So we come to the beginning of the Old Testament and of the Quran. The beginning of the Old Testament says, all the people have to understand is right up to here. The people, the sciences will come together, and the rainbow is going to be my tool. You guys are offensively pretending passions and emotions as individuals grouped and as the species body of volume as a certain type of victim / hyper victim. And then and you have to pretend other when you, and because you, in other words, because representatives of the way styles of how you think and speak and use your own theories, you have people representing that online, using it to make opinions to others, just to tell them to stop. Oh, take your meds. So World Trade Center has roles with people with a Rob Rodriguez, who made confessions about his roles with logistics and untimely deaths that were also confirmations and demonstrations tied to others' confessions and demonstrations of his role. I don't know him. He's one of the people involved with interbranch on my street with overt criminal enterprises, private ones through time, attaching me and other people, fake locations, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. The roles with little, switching names interbranch, fabricated police reports since I was a kid with no writing, so you can't respond to it, and their uses of everyone's name, leaving out things because where they put everyone speaking to others is criminally involved, and getting in the way of people at each age from using the revelations that come from when you understand American history that had a breaching method against the Native Americans. It was with through the colonists, but they had a breaching method against them first too, just like they made Native Americans against Native Americans. So then it had that humanity against humanity. So our founders had to come, but they did not have free speech because they would have been sensed as the ones behind it. Well, they were the ones that were behind it. Yeah, but they had to hide the roles with it, entertaining and speaking, what they would not. They told us to communicate about how they had to hide. What they would actually say, like everyone else. Everyone was sickly, distinctly fact, cheaply nature oriented, hyper possession / possession of a breaching method that countries A through Z forced themselves to be hide roles with insidiously. And that simultaneously is keeping people consciously needing to sense and to hurt more and more. People at each age of correlation nature, relative to where and to how, the databases, and all kinds of legal cases treatments, even when they made the right treatments and wrong treatments, there were our collusions with that. There's criminally foreign influence uses of the databases at the campuses, that unrelated ones. And so they have the rules and ways, they have narratives by people going into careers. Weathersfield has a guy named Emmett who was recorded and confessed and demonstrated involved with people fabricating audio and video with Weathersfield police and with some courts and with some doctors involved criminally with the kids and some social people too, and leaders of the kids and their kids, affected by a method that has everyone forced to speak through other people and makes exceptions criminally too, because relevant is where and how, and is how it's simultaneous as being and having been exploited. So one way we could do this is to make a Colonial Reggie, a black version, we switch black and white, and we make Native American the same. And when there's someone who's Native American who looks white or black, they say that, and people just they understand it. It's not like they're doing that thing with the Force, like in Darth Vader. Also note there's a guy who used the name Darth Vader, who's involved with the FBI, with criminally foreign influence uses of Carriage Hill Drive, the corner of Carriage Hill Drive and Fairlane Drive, and of Griswold Street and Fairlane Drive, with a whole bunch of people tied to Joshua Stryker involved with identity theft, fraud, falsified police reports, with a Judge Smith and a Judge Killian and other ones. There are ones from Middletown through time involved criminally with forensics locations and with foreign and domestic doctors. They also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed it's their roles with corners tied to along Route 3 and at the corner of Southstein Highway and Town Line Drive, because also they have the Weathersfield Police Department and fire and Rocky Hill Police Departments involved with the police families involved. And there's a Mike Levine. I don't know. 2 times they were per, they did little tricks having him be where I was going to be to make it look like I knew him. He's also one of the ones involved with a Robert Rodriguez on off the campuses, involved with, you know, some untimely deaths, even if made up. They were connected once through time, and there were timed uses of it, of the names involved with timed identity thefts, fraud, slanders. They intercity did at the same time, and their motivations, because they don't know me. These are people involved with the intelligence community as names that are also involved with a whole bunch of different countries. And so they have a whole bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University, also tied to this, the confessions of the people, tied to the Mike Levine and his family. I don't know his family at all or him. And it's also on off Town Line Drive and on spots along Route 3. So we have to get a response for the campuses. They play a game where they pretend people said things and didn't make sense. They didn't let us. They don't let people speak, and they say, "Hold on." In other words, Robert Rodriguez, I didn't respond to his confessions in the time before that regarding a girl that was dead after he made the first confession, and there's a lot of that with people. Then they say the person's dead. People who were planting evidences by saying and acting behavior at locations where and how they're involved with interbranch confessions tied to those same people and names that they bring up and locations that they brought up. A whole bunch of names on Elm Street and Rocky Hill, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a Dillon family and ties to a Dillon family, a guy who said he used to be his partner, and 2 speech class teachers I had involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Any exception to, they used criminally too. In other words, and they hid as roles, hiding what I caught them doing with a Fred Grisette. But I didn't know that. And they hid that then. That's why they were using a Fred Grisette as one of the people that, with the men and women with the houses next to the campuses involved with identity thefts and frauds, where and how all the various locations' names have been needing to hide lie progressions because of their roles with illusions through all the fake broadcasts, fake, news predicate acts. It's worse than saying fake news. And, also criminally foreign influence readings of statutes are also involved here. But this is also relevant to how all these countries do this together. And so, there are people with the Morrow family and the Mendez family further involved with like a John DeMorrow and a Joe DeMorrow, further have roles with some overt criminal enterprises, and with the Jerry Kerr, and also brought up by the confessions of a Jerry Miller, Officer Jerry Miller, on Facebook. He pretended he took a picture of me with a helicopter growing pot, and he's one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people with two speech classes. Also 2 different times I took cooking class. People in those classes were involved with various natures of federal crimes, with the foreign and domestic, and crimes with the names that locations supposed to be against drugs crimes. These are the ones that are using it because they're putting fake conversations with people in the databases. They're putting fake information about little kids into databases. They're even drugging little kids criminally. Now, to get this, you have to see what I caught the Judge Killian doing with the sex offenders, with the upskirt pictures. There are people involved with various natures of child abuses unconsciously. Now there are people tied to my area, involved with patients of doctors, involved with Judge Killian, and involved with other judges, also of various courts, criminally involved with the Leahy family, that pretended conversations with me and ties to me through time with others. That also tried. There's a Kevin Harris, and there's a Harris family that is involved with the Ray Reynolds and others with Wester no Westbrook Westbrook and I don't try to make fake exceptions trying to know me. There are people with Central Connecticut State University intelligence with Scalora family, like intelligence with CIA and with military, foreign and domestic, on off, like Normandy Heights and West Hartford, who have roles with military, with medical, foreign and domestic, where they've been using the databases, translators and teachers of translators as roles with the World Trade Center, criminally foreign influence, and use that using criminally foreign influence uses of corners of buildings as people also with criminally foreign influence uses of corners of streets, like the ones like in Old Weathersfield, all the way from there to Central Connecticut State University, on off Paul Manafort Drive, CCSU, on the southern side of it, and on off the other sides of it through time, where syntactically they're involved with saying and doing things at locations where behavior racketeering worse than war crimes is involved. But I'm calling it racketeering because former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, he's one of the ones involved with planting evidences with the names involved on my street, also that aren't even here anymore, like the name D. Simone and the name O'Brien. These are one of the ones with Hartford Police and Weathersfield Police, also with police from other in Rocky Hill and other departments. And then they have their family members, their kids, with their neighbors. They lie about when people speak and where they think about their passions, emotions, and line. These are people preventing writing since I was a kid because they trapped themselves involved with kids I never even saw on the middle school campus or on the grammar school campus. That's why I figured out what they do with the quick exceptions. Then you remember that person's name, and they're lying about their motivations for how and why they did that, and that's relevant to where they're putting in the tricks and databases. And these are also people that make confessions regarding their roles with criminal foreign influence at grammar school, then roles of men. I don't know, Christopher Cullen. And I know that Christopher Cullen is recorded with his family and with Jennifer Smith involved with predicate acts with a former Mayor Gold and other mayors and with town offices and with all kinds of natures of industries uses where their sense and sensibilities for this is my client. I'm going to leave out some details and things like that. This is my where we're using these people. We're going to use some details. So that's forced from this game when they're little kids playing games with pretending people know each other, and lying about putting tricks in databases with people from Central Connecticut State University. A whole bunch of people with Central Connecticut State University leading up to the World Trade Center attack in New York City and Washington, D.C. had roles from Connecticut also that they had as the names involved. And then they pretend they want privacy. I tried to get a private place to speak about this because I don't want to speak about the name Keem. God bless you guys. I'm sorry for what happened to your father, and I want to counter it too. And so, in other words, but they locked you guys. You have to be honest because there's a Rob Rodriguez, and there were uses of him, the intelligence community, spreading lies about me, making illusions like I know them, and their motivations too. There are means to demonstrate that recorded. And this is relevant to all kinds of topics treatments. So know how they have polling and research, all kinds of criminality with that since founding tied to this. These countries are sick, individually grouped it together, and we're gonna deal with this. But this is how we could do it too, by making people understand American history real fast. Yes, so in other words, they have to understand. People don't understand because we have other told to them by experts who have physical delusions, identity delusions, and nature delusions. Now, I never read that anywhere. I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to delineate their delusions from their criminal foreign influence. I'm going to show you that, and anyone who wants to deny the significance of how the black, simply by having black pupils, whites of eyes, and understanding how the Native Americans had the breaching method against them, and how the founders did, and how everyone did sickly distinctly is important to understand. Where people pretend emotions and passions offensively to deny the significance of things, this is better than um, means to say reparations. This is asking for injunctive reliefs for legitimate means. Their identities at the formal locations and all private tied to them, they cannot defend them. They cannot afford to pretend to be integrity and your short words using truths this way. Because there are many things that connect with truths that are true always, like this, simultaneously. So they switch names into branch with this as ones, as victims slash predator. I mean, slash hyper victims, as I could show you, but they need to be claimed other because that's what this game is about. There were others involved since they were kids, involved criminally for a whole bunch of ties to Elm Street and Rocky Hill. Our names that are involved with federal crimes on the campuses I went to, specifically that were designed to use the sense and sensibilities of people that lived around me and others, for where and how as people rolls with uses of corners of streets and of roles with wire crimes, with the various natures of police forms and interbranch involved with this. So you have to understand what they've been using the parks for. So there's a Tom Perone and a Danielle Perone, and there are three different guys, and one of them has a twin brother. I don't know if he has another brother because there's also a Jamie Carone. There's two Carone brothers. I think Kevin and Mark Carone, and there's a Jamie Carone involved. I never saw Kevin and Mark Carone on a campus I went to when I was a kid in my life. One time they put him in a class with me at CCSU, in other words, they have roles with a Danielle Perron and with a Tom Perron, and their roles with various natures of journalists, personally and professionally, criminally, and intercampuses, and with religious locations, and with the locations next to them, and people involved with DMV, Department of Transportation, the state police. These are ones who are involved with recorded relevant where and how all those people and their families are kept needing to hide the same finite act of progressive lies. Relevant. Anyway, for example, so we take for our founders, we make a white version of we make 13 colonial Reggies, each of the first 13 original colonies. We will learn about them a new way now, about how sickly distinctly everyone was hurt by it, what was hiding, what was sickly non-distinctly to keep its method singular from being discerned, how it propagated a whole bunch of other methods and natures of criminal insidiousness only capable of being just like relevant to gun shootings. See, we're gonna bring legitimacy, we're gonna Bismillah. Know how the beginning of the Old Testament and the beginning of the Quran say what the stewards of these books cannot afford discerned. They were written with consciousness, knowingly that all identity ground locations were going to stay criminally foreign influence, self-valued, and that would be effectively and is effectively used criminally foreign influence and by a method that knew that we all locations, areas, and states would have to have that countered, and the federal will have to have that countered sickly distinctly. Other countries' equivalents, and everyone will be using isms. Isms are forced per offensive, criminal, foreign influence. There are only three branches of government. Their identities of volume were used criminally effectively to keep remote uses of them by showing them how they used fact, treatment, nature, predicate acts, methods against, humanity wrongly. Way, leaving out exceptions, because this they were backed into the gangs with the while the gangs were kept needing at the same time, and the private kept needing to have the same sequence shift, final act, progressive lies. Uh, Everyone spoke and speaks for the economy and left out the exceptions. Our founders left us to speak for them, to communicate for themselves. They want us to communicate about not to interpret what they said without interpreting the breaching method that measured and maintained what everyone said to see who was part with trying to get Constitution unabridged forced up there and trying to get Marbury versus Madison. Even though it was Madison, they had to hide the extent of his roles and see president / chief. See, until we get to the hypernative system or a means to it, one thing we could do all the countries at once, we could make a hypernative tribe for our founders who we know were forced to entertain themselves as an individual identity as a country, now forced to entertain themselves with allies, whatever, all that chaos, individually grouped and together, tactical ulterior from how nature would have and wanted. And no one had a choice because this came from semi-ancient times, and no one realized, no one fathomed that anyone would do that. Comfort how nature demonstrates things, and how it was going to demonstrate that the existence of this hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, so to speak. But it knew it now. It would have to demonstrate it through all who self-cultivated roles with it. Then had to pretend, they didn't discern where and how they're differentially not wanting to be criminally foreign influence logic, nature, how that was is exploited like that. And it was, where and how formal evidence is predicate acts roles in collusion with the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones is needed to show simultaneously how worse was his present. So forgiveness is to say, not to blame people. I'm using people's names because they won't put names on paper, and they're pretending passions and emotions and backgrounds. Because what's recorded shows they were making subjects treatments and time treatments where they are and only capable of using time treatments simultaneously too fast and simultaneously too slow and simultaneous ways to get over on people. Then they needed to hide lie progressions from that. On off the state. This has to come, in other words, through time. On off the state prison offices, on off the state judicial branches, on off their games, changing where the signs of the streets are so people can't explain stuff. They have where the three spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike involved, and which is also involved with this, with FBI and judicial corruption, roles with military form people with UConn and Trinity College, tied to investigators, judicial families, involved with FBI with overt criminal enterprises like Los Solitos and other gangs and their roles with sexual circles with middle school kids, with the state police, families, and things like that, behind people's backs, pretending they know them, lying about their behavior, lying about, you know what I mean, you know what I mean? And then they're connecting the people that they grew up with, and they're making it look like popularity or that, like that, and things from backgrounds. That's why they're making people mad. That's why, you know, right? Even though the news was supposed to not make things up. So in other words, we have the phenomenon of an untapped market as hyper journalism. I'm not a licensed journalist. We could do this with YouTube videos to organize a movie that could be owned by the function. We could organize towards, and we can gain the executive orders and agreements of the other branches will help us. If and we can set up temporary space locations where for better than free and better than standard we're in now. We're going to address it as it is, a torture trap. The suburbs, let alone New York City, let alone cities across the world. We have to conceive as fact treatment nature ourselves in a semi-ancient trap, way low short of our power and might means, let alone by that which is the identity of space slash might, and can be so strong as the only one can be so strong and the order of the finite at the same time. We could ally with that means fact treatment nature oriented wise. It is more probable and is demonstrable that in ancient times that China, people in China, humanity, at the same time, hyper simultaneously, people in Europe, in Africa, humanity was the victim of the other species. Before the republic was made. And what made humanity gain liberation over that was following the identity that demonstrates what's really going to cause positive value nature progressions, acts in nature, and how it uses exceptions and exception nature distinctly from ourselves or from anything that could be invented, because it uses the only increasing value of what really came as truth before the smallest finite detail now. And it uses also as an order, and then that is simultaneously with the value of the order of the finite details. Know how we can only grapple with the finite, details to an extent. We can only grapple with group details to an extent. And we can only grapple with or for the human body. We've only one way. See, now what speaks for humanity comes through filters, abridged, because it does not use the short words and their revelations. So the people keep it, in other words, so people don't come on my posts and speak about nothing personal, about personal things. How's this and that? Don't no criminal seriousness positive, even though that's not criminal seriousness, it's natural. In other words, this is a serious thing. No one spoke for law. Many ways this is discernible. And why that is serious, because who takes it seriously knows there's a breaching method there with American history. And who knows that knows second it should, and before it becomes manifest, there's conscious uses of the identities that are intercultural, intersexual, and their differences uses interbranch, individually grouped and together. Their identities are manifest roles with their uses of fact-achieving nature-oriented predicate acts, individually grouped and together. The branches of government as a certain type of victim slash hyper victim, kept with their overt criminal enterprises, private ones, union corruption, all kinds of natures, medical corruption, roles with the overt criminal enterprise, all that, and that insidiousness of people A through Z. So Weathersfield town office is involved with this through time. FBI, when they speak about their identity, there are a bunch of recorded means that show that they're leaving out details. So a certain type of victim predator was told to pretend they were integrity when they were or not. They can't defend that and afford to discern properly what quote, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. As I was taught by my father, Marbury versus Madison means. And there's also nature itself has demonstrations of this. So we have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes that are manifest as crime methods that are fact-achieving nature oriented, like pretending people. The Britain Superior Court is recorded pretending people and confessed and demonstrated pretending people want to have control over communications. And the federal investigators have also been doing that. And they're pretending they're against crimes no matter where they see them, because they are the certain type of victim predator that have roles with conscious criminal uses, self-value of where and how the youngest kids who want to speak for honestly, properly for American history, they're going to be sensed and hurt because employed was other to be said, while from off campuses increasingly self-value uses of on off campuses reactions or non-reactions and perception itself, for this being also like magic tricks they're using. We're exploiting where we're going to walk and things like that. It's like a magician does little tricks. They're planting the three branches of government's members increasingly better than perfectly, being and having been used remotely, criminally foreign influence as fact treatment natures, and as fact treatments and non-treatments, and as roles with interbranch locations with all crime scenes increasingly, and with other identities of criminal insidiousness, but not bound how they claim them bound. That's just exploiting the little rat trap that was set up to cause negative value nature progressions, action natures, and employed them for the breaching method to blame it on other things, others, ourselves. Exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. So we can make 13 Colonial Reggies. So then it's not like we're trying to reinvent American history. It's also, we stay on the principles with this, for example, and we show how our founders had to fear if they would be even found, if everyone had to fear, not just our founders, even contemplating half of what they, a fraction of what they contemplated. It's against the law. And don't forget they had to extort our other founders. So what our founding was about and our founders were about. To discern this, we have to use their communications, which is distinct from what they say. Boxing is red. Prepare your head, your soul. So in other words, Colonial Reggie will be a brother of James Madison, and he'll be at 13 different colonial locations, and Colonial Reggie will approach him, and he'll. If we don't have to do all 13 at once, but Colonial Reggie will approach him and communicate what the plan would be. And we're going to put a hyper tribe because the Native Americans too, they didn't have free speech and they still don't, sickly distinctly from how presidents don't. I'm not saying they're not going to pretend other, but there are proofs of it. If they try to pretend other, all locations, areas, and states, formal and informal, fact sheet in nature, or forcing them, or already forcing them to entertain, saying and communicating other than is real, and dishonestly while pretending other simultaneously, still for the breaching method. See, that was the logic gate where that will be important because we're gonna program, and in other words, because the even with the gaming systems, there are proofs that just like with the computers they have, hello world as syntax that people don't have to report where their source of it if they're going to use it for teaching. I forgot what the other equivalent of that is. And in other words, but the point is, so then this is the thing. And so now we're going to have the Native American chief of one of the Native American hyper tribe chiefs, the main one of the hyper tribe members, like one of the main ones of the hyper tribe members. This is also a little rap guy and friends. I'm taking from it, but if it's for charity, we're worth it, and I mean, it just makes them more powerful. Little rap guy and friends. Little rap guy and friends, like our founding parents, were an anti hyper archetypal criminal enterprise, but it began and still is one that started as anti archetypal criminal enterprise called the Black Pupils. And it's a cartoon series, Little Rap Guy and Friends. Is counter-obfuscated, relevant to where and to how, Connecticut interbranch switching and forging names. And the private tied to them, like Sandy Hook, has names from Sandy Hook. They're doctors, people that work in the prisons, who have crimes with their patients and prisoners before they were caught. And while they were there, they're making them say things so other investigators can look and make it look like people knew each other, look like things were true, and sequence shift they're speaking into it. So they have on of the state judicial branch, they have the courts, they have a guy named Alex Jones, and they have the Sandy Hook foundations and stuff like that involved with police forms and courts, and as names involved with other countries, and doctors who have long been criminally involved with placements at campuses, as where and how relevant are these distinct identities of victims / hyper victims and uses of that. So these are people pretending passions and emotions and using others who are going to pretend passions and emotions, like, for example, the relevance of their faith and the validity of the police or in the validity of the courts or of the validity of them believing that because of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, they need to have faith in the courts. There are people involved with taking my idea when I came around a corner because they said something Then they took my idea and made everyone run out of the school to protest the beating of. I shouldn't smile with that. In other words, I'm smart because I'm thinking about the other thing at the same time of Rodney King, and because also, I don't know all those people's names, but they were involved with foreign and domestic interbranch military exceptions nature tied to them. And with a girl who had a conversation with them when we were out in the parking lot. Then they gave me the credit, like I did it, but they're the ones that went around and told everyone. And then the principal looked at me, and she's having a conversation with this girl who was involved with the people when I was in middle school, who were involved with gangs and criminal child abuses and planting evidences. Also, fact cheating nature oriented tricks with databases, making the teachers roles, making them put fake things in databases because they're having people tell on others to pretend them to put it sequence shifts, make it look like the line, with behavior racketeering involved too. And then they're making the boys and the girls sickly, distinctly victims, and they're exploiting the reactions of this because the girls and the boys sickly are distinctly at each age prevented short words and the means to protract more and more, where how those short words are prevented by people in collusions with other locations with the short words. Relevant too to also where for how off the location. So two O'Brien family brothers when they were little kids, when I was in like second or third grade, they asked me to go into a car in their driveway, and they made confessions. It was also tied to demonstrations of use of a flag involved, and also and then when I was in middle school, I know people I never saw tied to them, but they also did this. Mark Violet and Justin Kovinskis. They put me into the car and they made confessions of their roles with KKK themed military police and roles with the O'Briens that way. But I found out other ways too. It's recorded. They were tied to people in my grammar school who are involved with foreign and domestic military families and medical families who have been stacking fake things in databases, who have been liars, pretending others are liars behind their back, and making fake exceptions too in front, including that's why they had to hide the news. Connecticut WFSB has roles with names on off Elm Street and Rocky Hill with investigators interbranch who have been involved with campuses intercity, names like Rocky Hill campuses and Weathersfield campuses and Hartford campuses and houses next to them, who have been running in and going to locations saying things. They've been using where and how relevant are recorded involved remote uses of investigators, in all locations. The course of black pupils, whites of eyes, and bridge is about remote uses of investigators. What the heck did they, and then blaming other things, others ourselves, for the real causes of the shootings. That's recorded, relevant part of it. And their research and their validity of what they, those whole processes. The only way we can counter it is not by blaming the names of the locations, but we have to use those names of the locations, not by blaming the individuals, but by blaming the individual fact keeping sequence shifts relevant and roles with off campuses involve confessions and demonstrations where and how subjects treatments are made and grades are made. They left out how they demonstrate, record, confirm collusions with people that live on our streets from when we were kids that were collusions with interbranch and foreign since we're kids. So therefore, you have to tell on other people increasingly that you never even knew. And like a Joshua Julian, he's also one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with lies from the newspapers and broadcast years ago, involved with various natures of federal criminals. He was spreading lies about that on the Facebook page of a principal sex offender, of a principal child abuser, though, referred to it as, because it was juxtaposed natures of organized crime and federal rules and wire crimes, federal rules of evidence as crimes, child abuse, identity theft, frauds, and worse, torture, you know, sabotage of people's education, time. You have some sick people working with Hartford Hospital and with the various nature of courts involved. They've been switching and forging names. These are also people involved with other courts, personally, criminally, even grouped in together. That's tied to the grouped methods that have been used, where how their identities have been used. And they have overt criminal enterprises and roles with that, with abuses of the kids, relevant to the people involved with the programs with Millwoods Park through time, involved with federal crimes, with investigators, and military on off Hartford Hospital and their family members. There's a Leahy family also involved with uses of various parts of the court of that park, and the media criminally involved with them, and the police that there's good police that make confessions tied to this about the police chief switching and forging names, and now he's lying about why he really went down. And also there's a police chief years ago. Now there's another one too, but it was because of them. And I don't know if I spoke which one was right, but one of them years ago reportedly tied to the girlfriend at one of the houses involved with the O'Briens, and with a Phil Colonial. It also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He drove his bike down my street, as rolls with some various courts, judges, and prosecutors, and doctors, and people that work with prisons in their campuses involved, even in interstates. And the rules of parking very private, involved with crimes with the kids, identity thefts, frauds, falsified police reports, criminally foreign influence uses of elections locations, the community center, the houses and the families' names next to them on all sides of it, too. Let's get them onto paper. But also, while we're doing this is what we could do with the 13 Colonial Reggies. What do you see? You're gonna see how scared everyone had to be. You're gonna see how no one wanted those crazy laws against everyone. And you're going to see how, except when you sustain that, it's relative to everything, but everyone's ignoring it. So you're going to see how exceptions and exception nature are being and having been used, where that can't be defended and afforded short words proper, science proper. So that increasingly has to self-value simultaneously in layers of motivations apparent, a coordinated use of that no one wanted. Again, where and how all exceptions, exception nature, are there, also in demonstration of the same thing, because that's all they discern. So everyone's forcing everyone to speak through others. One time I saw somewhere there was a leader of one of the group things, and he was saying, "Oh, if someone's going to speak something about someone, come to me. Come to that person. Should come to this person." That's used to lock people into roles with he said, she said, where and how the relevant fact, nature oriented predicate acts are involved. So people associated with a Judge Smith, with a Jeremy Grohl, and with a Subby have through time roles with federal crimes, with mayors, and with medical families and with various other courts associated with that and locations, including prisons, programs involved with the kids, programs training people to be involved with the interbranch and such. People on and off Millwoods Park, especially involved through time that I don't know at all. Others were made to pretend other who have roles with federal crimes with people from Hartford Hospital with the mental health and the badges and the nurses tied to them and the lawyers tied to them and their schools. So UConn has roles with predicate acts with whole families on and off their formal business locations, campus locations. I don't know Mark Violet on campus. I saw him one time, maybe two times, and they tried to make the exception, pretend I don't realize in the cafeteria of Weathersfield High School's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also one of the ones involved with the Weathersfield police chief and the judges and prosecutors and medical families involved criminally with the kids. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, fabricating motivations. I never had one word of conversation with a guy named Joe. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with them, with an O'Brien family and people on my street with the ones with the buildings at downtown Hartford near the state capitol. Also with John Mile, made confessions tied to that. Weathersfield Pizza involved with that. People all along Route 3 involved with names at the spots next to the state capitol, involved with interbranch switching names as names rolls with planting evidences with little magic tricks with the databases at the campuses that are fact cheap and nature oriented. And it's also further uses of all along roads and routes for this, like all along that road and route from Weathersfield to CCSU has people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with their each age of their family member in the background, preventing me from getting a response because they've been locking in lies that they know are true, relevant to the people involved with their family members through time and conversations with that. Now, so they shouldn't fear that because then that will make that fear. That's why, in other words, if you want privacy, get me a response. Please, Modern Pastry. Mazzucato Pastry has roles with Weathersfield Police, intercities through time, and with that spot, with that corner, since years before they had that spot, even before the Starbucks had been there for years. They were involved with names with Elm Street and Rocky Hill, involved with federal crimes, identity thefts and frauds of all kinds of mixed natures, attaching little kids and their families to fake ties to themselves, fake nature ties to themselves and others, even though as investigators, also as their roles timed with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. So there is a Joshua Stryker who was brought up by the confessions of Dean Alford and others, and one of the women who was a girl when I was a kid, who had that conversation with the principal, and then she asked me what everyone should do, and I said, and she said, no one will get in trouble if we go in. So I said, everyone should go in. And in other words, that girl was putting fake things and having conversations behind my back with me, with people that were criminally foreign influence with overt criminal enterprises and involved with rape threats through time. Now with adults that had roles with kids with such, and with reports of that being real, whether it's real or not. Those are, in other words, people involved with that. Rather than have me say these names, get them on paper, because these are the people that brought it up with this. And their motivations are also recorded, involved criminally. In other words, there's a Mr. Neville and others who were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by Rick C.M. Faglione, also with the Leahy family, that influenced them to identity thefts, fraud, slanders, fake ties to me, fake natures of ties to me through time, and from other classrooms. And seeing it to make it look like they had motivations with the that were their own. but there were other motivations. And these are the people involved with the names. In other words, little wimpy weirdos too. Sticking the hook reportedly, I don't know, reportedly in the nose of Rick Faglio and Justin Klavinskis. He's one of the ones on off Central Connecticut State University who's involved with being a little fake in the background with girls from my grammar school that I never had a conversation with in my life. That he had walked by me one time, pretended to know me real quick with his wife. Now that's also one of the ones on and off the spots intercities, who's been roles with the little magic tricks with the databases, and has the names involved on and off Trinity College with this Joshua Stryker, telling lies about me to girls behind my back since I was a kid, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people from Local 230, also recorded and confessed by and demonstrated by people on and off Trinity College, involved with federal crimes with him, and with relevant rapes, and confessions tied to it, and against people I know, and and you know. So let me get a response from them, because these are the people involved also with the Weathersfield police forging and switching names and making things up. They also have people, and they're also involved still with these police forms, fabricating fake sex offender registry map, and putting me, they've been just slandering me everywhere, intercities through time. They have a whole bunch of people on Central Connecticut State University involved with from some poison, and a whole bunch of state police families involved with these games, planting evidences that are fact treatment nature oriented too. Again, where they're pretending people's passions and emotions. Make sure they get, people's motivations when they're leaving out what's tied and what was timely. Better get them on paper too, because I don't know the Perones, and they pretended other. And they used my name there was a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that they used that people tied to the houses around them also had criminally foreign influence uses of my name relevant, and like uses of the coaches of teams. I never had a personal conversation with Coach Hagenbart in my life, by the way, because he's one of the ones involved with the intelligence community, with Jonathan Mayano, people on off Elm Street and Rocky Hill, involved with a whole bunch of people tied to Mark Violet, UConn, also criminally involved with John Mayano, with judges and prosecutors, people that work with New Britain Superior Court, people involved with Middletown through time, involved criminally with people on my street that are involved criminally here, with various natures of police forms, overt criminal enterprises, and people with the witness protection program simultaneously, and as various natures of federal criminals, as some of them as co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and their family members, also as the ones involved on off Trinity College and CCSU with the confessions and recorded predicate acts relevant, and roles with uses of that intercampuses, interdepartments too. Time. So we're going to show how the sciences have a identity that is shared by themselves and bound by the decreasing value of Earth's special difference, and of their special difference hyper additional to that. Right, thank you. Vaccines. I teach you things.